Order, order. The National Assembly is in session. Item 1, questions to the First Minister. Question 1, John Griffiths.
Will the First Minister make a statement on community volunteering in Wales?
Yes, we know that volunteers make a vital contribution to our communities. We support volunteers through core funding of £6.7 million this year to Welsh third sector infrastructure organisations, including over £600,000 in core funding for the Gwent Association for Voluntary Organisations.
Yes, First Minister, I think everybody here would agree that across the length and breadth of Wales, volunteers do an amazing job in so many different ways. And without that contribution, many aspects of life in our communities would simply grind to a halt. Would you agree with me that we do need to reward and support our volunteers, and an important way of doing this is through the time banking system, which recognises that contribution and provides free access to leisure, entertainment and other services, and we do need to support and indeed roll out time banking across Wales?
Yes, time banking, thank the member for the question. It is a way of recognising people's worth in a way that isn't monetary. It's a powerful way of incentivising community action and involvement. And we have previously provided over £178,000 of funds for the financial year 2014 to 15 to support the continuing development of the time banking movement in Wales in partnership with the Interreg programme.
Janet Finch-Saunders.
Dr. Prelude. First Minister, ahead of Remembrance Sunday, it is important that we acknowledge the dedication and hard work of the many community volunteers across Wales and in my own constituency of Aberconwy, tirelessly selling poppies and raising money for the Poppy Appeal. This support is really vital to the Royal British Legion and gives support to veterans, servicemen and women and their families, and reminds us just how much has been given for this country by so many. First Minister, will you join me today in paying tribute to all those giving of their time and energy so that we may remember and truly support those who have given so much more for our country and indeed our values?
Yes, indeed. I join the member in those sentiments. It's been quite noticeable again this year that there are more poppy sellers than even in previous years. I've seen many people wearing their poppies. We know, with Remembrance Sunday coming up this Sunday, that many people's minds will be focused on the sacrifices that have been made by so many over so many years. And it's very encouraging to see, of course, that more and more poppies are sold every year.
Julie Morgan.
Presiding Officer, would the First Minister join me in congratulating Cardiff and District Samaritans, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, and is one of the oldest continuously operating charities in South Wales, and its volunteers, many of them constituents of mine, give confidential support at all times, day and night, to people suffering from emotional distress.
Yes, I would, and I thank the member for bringing this important milestone to my attention. Could I add my thanks and my congratulations as well, of course, to the Cardiff and District branch of the Samaritans on behalf of the Welsh Government. And we know that without the important work that they do, that many people would not have been able to overcome great difficulties in their lives. And indeed, it's right to say that without the work of the Samaritans, there are some people who would not be with us now if it wasn't for the advice that was given at the time that it was needed.
Clear Griffith.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. We all know that the pressure on the public purse continues, and that puts more and more pressure on volunteers very often to step into the breach. Would you join with me, therefore, in congratulating the approach taken by Conwy County Borough Council when it comes to remaining with their library provision? Many libraries have now transferred to the ownership of local communities. Llanfairfechan and Cerrig-y-Drudion are examples of that, and therefore would you join with me in congratulating them on that approach, but also to encourage other local authorities who are considering some steps in terms of the future of libraries to look at that model specifically?
Well, I know that this is a model that has been developed in other parts of Wales as well. For example, I was at the Llansawel Library in Neath Port Talbot speaking to volunteers that had taken the library at Britain Ferry over, and they have actually secured the future of that library. And because we know there's a serious pressure on the public purse, and it's good to see that people can take local resources and use them and keep them open for the benefit of local people. So it's good to see that the library survives and it's good to see that this is a model that's been adopted in many other areas.
Diolch, Dr Willowit. First Minister, last Saturday I had the opportunity to visit the headquarters of Hospice at Home Aberystwyth, a new volunteer-led charity which is offering community-based end-of-life care to patients in Ceredigion. The Hospice at Home volunteers deliver palliative care in both Aberystwyth and some of its rural hinterland communities, and despite having been only recently set up, has already established a high-quality service which understands the needs of people at the end of their lives and also the important needs for support of their families in addition. First Minister, will you join me in praising the hard work of the volunteers of Hospice at Home Ceredigion, and also, subject to diary pressure, consider accepting an invitation to visit them so as to gain at first hand a greater understanding of their work?
I'd be pleased to consider the invitation if the member would send me a formal invitation through the normal channels. Yes, I mean, what's interesting, of course, is that the work that the members described involves enabling people to stay at home rather than having to go into a hospice. That's been the major change in the NHS, particularly over the past 10 or 20 years, where instead of there being an overly hospital-based care system, people are now more able to stay at home in comfort. What's important, of course, is their pain is managed in an environment that's familiar to them. But of course that depends on the good work of Hospice at Home to make sure that people do have that option and are able to stay at home for as long as they can. Question 2, Gwyn Price.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Will the First Minister outline how the Welsh Government is supporting local high street businesses in Islwyn?
Yes, this year we've introduced a number of important business rates measures targeted to support businesses, including a further cap on the business rates multiplier, an extension of small business rates relief, and the extension and enhancement of the Wales Retail Relief Scheme.
Thank you for that answer. First Minister, Saturday the 5th of December is Small Business Saturday. Last year, over 16 million people shopped in small businesses in the UK on the day. What is the Welsh Government doing to ensure the success of Small Business Saturday is built on to aid small businesses in my constituency?
Well, we know that for small businesses, what they need more than anything else are customers. And it's important that people understand if they don't use small businesses, that those businesses will eventually disappear. I know that Small Business Saturday will take place on the 5th of December. I know that Business Wales proposed to support activity around Small Business Saturday, including supporting the SBS UK team when they visit Wales, promoting the SBS UK campaign and the bus tour. And I know that the Business Wales Marketplace initiative will be supporting small businesses on Small Business Saturday by providing cabins and training experiences at both Cardiff Christmas Market and the Portmeirion Christmas Fair to showcase and celebrate micro and small Welsh businesses. In addition, a startup and entrepreneurship campaign that was launched on the 1st of December. It will run until the 10th of December as part of an integrated support small and local businesses in Wales campaign.
Mohammed Asghar.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, the UK government has announced it is to allow local authorities in England to keep money they collect from business rates to boost growth and to create jobs in their areas. What studies has the Welsh Government undertaken to the potential benefits of this policy on businesses in Islwyn and elsewhere in Wales? Would you be considering the same sort of policy in here?
Well, there is a rather large pitfall here in that we estimate around about 17 local authorities would lose out as a result of such a system being adopted in Wales. If you have a system where business rates are wholly contained within a local authority area, then the element of cross-subsidy disappears. For example, Monmouthshire would lose over £4 million a year. So we have to consider very carefully allowing local authorities the flexibility that they need without them losing out in terms of having access to a smaller pot of money at a time of financial difficulty for them.
Lindsay Whittle.
Well, First Minister, you're right. Too many shopping online. Get out more, should be our call. First Minister, many struggling high streets are home to important historic buildings, particularly, indeed, in Islwyn, and they fall into misuse or disrepair as our town centres decline. Have you considered a specific strategy to make sure that these buildings can be used again for a purpose, perhaps as homes or something unrelated to traditional shopping as we have come to know it?
Those are matters for local authorities, and I know that local authorities are taking steps to redesign the mix within town centres. If I look at my own town centre in Bridgend, there are too many shop units and not enough offices. And it means that there are not enough office workers in the town in the day to provide the footfall for businesses. And looking at converting some, it's been happening, converting some of those shop units to offices and of course residential units as well is important in terms of making sure there are people in town centres day and evening. There are many town centres which don't have a footfall any longer. They're open between 9 o'clock and 5:30 when there's no one around. Most people are back after that time and they go to the supermarket because the town centre isn't open, the shops aren't open. So we do need to look at making sure that the footfall is there in the day, and that means more offices. But I think it's important that businesses start thinking about whether they actually do need to open between 9 and 5:30. Whether, in fact, 11 till 7 is a better model, given the working patterns that exist now, not the working patterns that existed 40 years ago.
I now call the party leaders to question the First Minister, starting this week with the Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch. First Minister, Plaid Cymru welcomes your announcement this morning regarding cutting the waiting time target for treating people experiencing mental ill health from 56 to 28 days. Now, I appreciate that your announcement today is in relation to adult mental health services, but I'd like to ask you about child and adolescent mental health services in the community. You'll be aware that the repercussions for children and young people waiting too long for mental health treatment can be lifelong. So can you tell us, please, what plans do you have to improve mental health services for children and young people?
Yes, we are investing an additional £800,000 in expanding CALMS provision from 2015, or during 2015 to 16. Health Board proposals have now been agreed. They will result in the recruitment of more specialist staff across Wales to work with primary care providers and to directly support young people in primary care, and that's expected to improve overall waiting times for both assessment and treatment. We know that evidence suggests that around a third of young people referred to specialist CALMS have no mental illness, if I can put it that way. A further third have low-level difficulties which wouldn't reach the threshold for treatment by a specialist service. So expanding primary care CALMS means that more young people can be assessed and, if appropriate, receive their treatment without the onward referral being needed. And that, of course, helps in terms of freeing up time for those who are in more need of the services that CALMS provide. So it is important that there are different ways of helping young people who have mental health issues. Some will not need the specialist treatment that CALMS provides, but we are investing to make sure, and working with health boards to make sure that the treatment is available more quickly.
I would accept that there needs to be a range of treatments, First Minister, but perhaps you can shed light on official figures then that show that between 2009 and 2014 there was a reduction in spending on child and adult mental health services in primary care of £2 million, leaving the overall spend on those crucial services at £5.1 million. Now, I'm aware that the mental health measure in 2012 recategorised some funding streams, and that might mean that the official statistics don't tell us the full picture. Can you give us an assurance then that there's not been a cut in funding for community mental health services for children and young people over this period? And are you prepared to publish the details and make them available in the library as soon as possible?
Well, there's no reason why that shouldn't be done. In terms of the investment that we made in mental health services, we have, of course, seen the 7.6.5 million investment that has gone in. We will see new services develop for our young people with neurodevelopmental conditions. And of course, what I should add is we've issued guidance outlining our expectation that all urgent assessment referrals to CALMS should be undertaken within 48 hours. And by the 1st of April next year, all routine assessments should be undertaken within 28 days. That's a significant difference to the situation that has existed, and that it reflects the new investment that we've put in.
Well, I'm still not clear whether or not you've provided an assurance as to whether or not there's been a cut. But over the past 2 years, it's clear that waiting times have deteriorated. Almost 2/3 of children now wait longer than 10 weeks for treatment to begin. Now, you've made a welcome announcement to create a more ambitious target for adults experiencing mental health problems, and as I've said, we welcome that. But will you now commit to tackling these appalling waiting times for treatment that our children are experiencing? And will you agree to set appropriate targets? And will you back this up with a firm commitment now to an annual real terms increase in funding for child and adolescent community mental health services?
Well, we will look to allocate the money that's required for child and adolescent mental health services. It partially depends, of course, on the budgets that we receive from the UK government, but we do know this is an area where we want to see improvement. And just to repeat what I said earlier, we have issued guidance outlining our expectation that all urgent referrals to CAMS should be undertaken within 48 hours. And also by the 1st of April next year, all routine assessments should be undertaken within 28 days. They are taxing targets, but we expect them to be met.
Call the Leader of the Opposition, Andrew R.T. Davis.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, 2 months before the Commission of Public Service Governance and Delivery published its report, an independent report I might add, why did you instruct Sir Paul Williams as to how you wanted his proposals laid out, presented and delivered?
Unless the Leader of the Opposition gives me more detail, I can't comment.
Well, First Minister, in emails that we've had released to us via FOIs from your Principal Permanent Secretary, it clearly shows that on October 2013, an email sent by him on your behalf stated that you prefer a series of options for proposals to reorganise local government. The email then went on to say you wanted no heavy steer in favour of any particular option. Remarkably, you also said that once the report was finalised, only you and your Permanent Secretary should be given a copy at that stage. Nobody else, not even your local government minister. That email went on the 20th of December. The Commission was supposed to independently review public services in Wales. Why then, First Minister, did you instruct it to do, and when to do it, and how to do it, spend £130,000 commissioning the report, and then bin its proposals?
I'm at a loss to understand what the Leader of the Opposition is trying to say here. Were they asked to provide an option? Yes, they had a free hand as to what their option might be. In terms of the heavy steer, I didn't want to give them the heavy steer. That's the whole point. I don't know what he's complaining about. So I took the view of the Williams Commission that I wanted them to be independent. I wanted them to come up with an option, if they could, but they had a free hand as to how that option was delivered, and there was certainly no steer from my office, as the email actually confirms.
First Minister, the principle of the Williams Commission was it to be independent. It was left to get on with its work as everyone assumed and come forward with the proposals. These emails clearly show that your officials and indeed yourself were heavily supporting the work of the Commission, shall we say,
yes, we were.
And directing how you wanted the final report to resemble your own thoughts on local government reorganisation. The issue is quite clear that you and your officials were directing what everyone else thought was an independent commission. Do you not recognise that this now calls into question any findings of the Williams Commission that has brought forward in their final report?
Well, I mean, that's an example of somebody who asked a question and realised it was a mistake by the time the third question was arrived at. Let me make it clear once again. The Williams Commission asked whether there should be a number of options or an option. My preference was there should be an option. It was for them to decide what that option might be, and they were given no steer at all as to what that option was. They were given a free hand in that. Now, if anybody can point out to me what is wrong with that, then I'm open to suggestions. But this is a scenario where an independent body with a member of the Conservative Party sitting on it was not directed in any way by government as to what their final conclusions should be. There was no point shouting now when he got it wrong. We're not given any steer as to what they should be doing. They were left to provide an independent report in any way that they saw fit. They were given no heavy steer, as the email suggests. It's a perfectly proper way of doing things.
And now the Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, could I return to the issue of mental health? You'll be aware that the Welsh Liberal Democrats have long campaigned for parity between physical and mental health. Now, your government announcement today that waiting time targets for mental health treatment will be kept from 52 to 28 days is very welcome. Could you confirm that under those new waiting time targets, a patient assessed as needing a psychological therapy will start that therapy treatment within 28 days of their assessment?
That is something that we expect to see, yes.
Thank you for that clarity and commitment, First Minister. As your government will be more than aware, setting a target is one thing, meeting it is quite another. Given that your own government's review found that some people are waiting up to 2 years to access psychological therapy? How many extra professionals and extra patient appointments will be created in order to fulfil your promise that you've just made in this chamber that people needing psychological therapy will receive it within 28 days?
Yes, as I said in the answer I gave to the Leader of Plaid Cymru, health board proposals have now been agreed. They will result in the recruitment of more specialist staff across Wales to work with primary care providers and to support young people in primary care as well. And of course we do expect that to improve overall waiting times for both assessment and treatment.
Thank you. As I said, I'm very glad for the clarity. It's really important for someone who's had the courage to go to their primary healthcare professional today to discuss a mental health issue, to know that if they need to have psychological treatment, that they will now receive that within 28 days. I think that's a massive step forward if the government is able to achieve that. As we've heard earlier, there are over 3,000 young people in Wales currently on a waiting list for CAMHS specialist mental health. And I accept that many of those young people don't need to be in that service at all. Indeed, it's a positively negative thing to be in that service and to have that label if that child doesn't need it. But there are many people in that service on a waiting list that desperately do need a professional intervention, and they need it quickly. Given what you've just said about improvements to assessment times, why does your government think that it's acceptable for young people after an assessment to wait for 112 days for treatment when you expect those who are adults only now to wait 28 days?
No, I mean, what we expect is with the recruitment of new staff that we will see waiting times improve with regard to CAMHS, but also it's important to ensure that those who don't need that specialist treatment get sometimes quicker and certainly appropriate treatment in other ways. And that's something, of course, that we're looking at doing as well, as I mentioned to the Leader of Plaid Cymru. But an urgent referral within 48 hours is important in terms of being able then to plan for the treatment and care of a young person with a mental health problem. And of course, routine assessments within 28 days is a significant improvement and something that we're determined to see through, given the funding that we have put in place. Bear in mind, of course, the mental health funding in Wales has been ring-fenced since 2008 to 2009 as well, but we want to make sure that there are more resources and more professionals involved in providing specialist advice to children and young people.
Question 3, William Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on NHS services in South Wales East?
Yes, NHS organisations in South Wales East are working hard to continually improve the quality of and access to health services in that area.
I'm grateful to the First Minister for his answer. The United Kingdom Lung Cancer Coalition, 10 years on, report, and this tracks how far lung cancer outcomes and services have progressed over the last decade, report that Wales has the second to worst lung cancer 5-year survival rate in Europe. Inequalities across Wales exist for provision of access to specialist nurses and surgery. How can these issues be addressed, First Minister, in a relatively short period?
Well, of course, we've already announced the significant investment in Velindre, which will help many people. Stereotactic radiotherapy is showing itself to be very promising when it comes to the treatment of lung cancer as well. And we know that the key to lung cancer, as with other cancers, is the future development of gene therapy targeted to the individual, and we are fortunate in that sense to have the Wales Centre for Cancer Genetics, boasting of course a Nobel Prize winner, which puts Wales at the forefront of research into this dreadful disease.
Jocelyn Davis.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Of course, First Minister, often these serious conditions are picked up following routine appointments with the GP. Now, last week, a close family member wanted a routine GP appointment. They rang the surgery, of course, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, as you have to if you want a routine. 59 times they rang that number before 8:30. Of course, only to find then that all the appointments had gone. It took 3 days to get a routine appointment, and some, I have to say, tenacity on the part of the family member. So how would you rate the accessibility of non-urgent GP appointments in South East Wales?
I think it's variable. Bear in mind that most GPs are independent contractors. I am aware of surgeries where it's perfectly possible to book online the evening before. It's perfectly possible to get through easily. I'm aware of other surgeries where there are no appointments at all. The GPs do need to ensure that there's greater consistency of services, sometimes within the same area. There is no reason why GPs shouldn't be able to offer appointments online these days. Plenty of them do. There is no reason why GPs shouldn't be able to offer the ability to order repeat prescriptions online as well. That helps to take the pressure off the phone lines as people use online services. I've seen good examples of this, for example, in Caerphilly and in my own patch in Bridgend. I'd encourage all GPs to actually make sure that they're as accessible as they can be and not just rely on the phones. That is the way things were done 20 years ago. It's not the way things need to be done now.
Kirsty Williams.
First Minister, the cornerstone of your plans for South East Wales Healthcare is the long-promised and yet-to-be-delivered Specialist Critical Care Centre. Now, the failure to deliver that project to date, something that was promised to be done before the last election and should now be open and accepting patients, isn't just having a knock-on effect for where people get their secondary care, but actually is now impacting on the ability to recruit and retain trainee GPs in South Powys. They now need to undertake their rotations for paediatrics at the Royal Gwent Hospital, travelling from rural Powys all the way to the Gwent to undertake that part of their training, and for other hospitalist specialties when they previously would have only had to travel to Neville Hall. This is making it a less attractive proposition to recruit trainee GPs to practices in South Powys. When will the SCCC, as promised by your government before the last election, actually be delivered?
I can confirm that Aneurin Bevan Health Board submitted the full business case for the SCCC to ourselves for consideration on the 14th of October. It was accompanied by an updated Clinical Futures Programme business case, which will look at the wider healthcare provision for the area, and both those cases are now with Welsh ministers and will now receive full consideration.
Question 4, Lynn Neagle.
Will the First Minister outline how the Welsh Government is helping to raise awareness of pancreatic cancer in Wales?
Well, pancreatic cancer is a dreadful disease. It's usually detected very late and is usually untreatable as a result of it. I think the survival rate past 5 years is less than 4% as a result of that. So awareness of pancreatic cancer in the community is essential for early diagnosis. And through the Cancer Delivery Plan, we have established a programme of work to support primary care in identifying cancer.
First Minister, this month marks Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, and I've just hosted an event with Pancreatic Cancer UK here today to mark it. It was clear from those who attended just how devastating this illness is. A recent study found that 71% of respondents in Wales could not name a single symptom unprompted. And while survival rates for most forms of cancer have been rising, survival rates for pancreatic cancer have remained shockingly low for the past 40 years. First Minister, will you join me in recognising the hard work of Pancreatic Cancer UK and their supporters throughout Wales in raising awareness of this awful illness? And can you give me your assurance that you will work with the Health Minister to look at delivering a national pancreatic cancer awareness campaign in Wales, similar to that run in England, Scotland and Northern Ireland?
Yes, I mean, pancreatic cancer can be very difficult to diagnose because the pancreas is buried deep in the abdomen and the symptoms can be very non-specific. What we're going to encourage GPs to do is where they see somebody who has a condition that isn't resolving, where symptoms are unusual, but it's difficult to pinpoint in terms of pancreatic cancer, that they do refer on for further investigations. It's a disease. My sister-in-law was 44 and she had 5 months after she was diagnosed. Very difficult to get that diagnosis, but it's a disease that doesn't really, is untreatable past a certain stage, and there are many others, I'm sure, in this chamber who people will know who were diagnosed and didn't have much time left once they were diagnosed. So early diagnosis is absolutely critical. I do understand that it is difficult to diagnose, but nevertheless, where there's an unusual pattern that is presented in somebody as they go and see a GP, we would encourage GPs to refer.
Janet Howarth.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And thank you, Lynn Neagle, for the work you did this afternoon in presenting that, that event for us. I think everybody in the chamber knows somebody with cancer, don't they? Of one form or another, it touches all our lives. And I wonder if the time has come for us to look more closely at the introduction of on-screen prompts for GPs when people do go and consult them, and also whether more sophisticated diagnostic tools can be introduced into some of our GP practices. We have the technology. Our dentists can perform x-rays and put them up on the screen, and vets don't seem to have a problem taking mobile scans out. So I wonder if the time's come for the technology to help us with diagnosing these more difficult
Quickly now,
diseases.
please.
Difficult to know because, of course, with many diagnoses, a consultant radiologist is needed to actually be able to read the x-ray properly. I mean, GPs will have had some training in radiology as part of their general medical training, but would GPs feel comfortable at feeling they're able to do that, or will they want to refer to a radiologist in any event? And I can't answer that question. It's for GPs to answer. I think, from our point of view as a government, we want to see GPs being unafraid to refer. We have seen cancer referrals increase greatly in Wales. Happily, most of those referrals lead to a result where no cancer is present, but better to be safe than sorry. So GPs, in fairness, have understood this. They are referring more people. And that does mean, of course, that what might be missed in the past is not being missed in the future. But as with any illness, diagnosis is not an easy thing, particularly for some cancers, and it can take some time to diagnose the cancer, and even longer sometimes to work out what the treatment plan should be. These things are best left, I think, to oncologists, but GPs have a critical role in terms of being able to refer where they have suspicions.
Question Pimp, Ellen Jones.
Question 5, Ellen Jones. Will the First Minister make a statement on progress in relation to the availability of superfast broadband in Ceredigion?
Well, before the Superfast Cymru rollout began in 2013, there was no access to superfast broadband in Ceredigion. So the work is progressing well, and there are 16,615 premises in the local authority area now able to access superfast broadband. That is almost half of Ceredigion, and we want to ensure that everybody will gain access by 2017.
This Sunday, First Minister, Trawsgoed in Ceredigion was the brightest and sunniest place in Britain since records began. Although the weather was very good there, I can tell you that the broadband is terrible there. And I attended a meeting last week in Llanfihangel y Creidyn, which is served by the Trawsgoed Exchange, and that village was given written confirmation from BT that they would be within the 96% of homes that would receive superfast broadband under the contract with your government. They're now given to understand as a village that they won't benefit under this programme a year on from having been given that written confirmation. Is it fair that a community such as this is misled in this way by BT? And will you raise this issue with BT and give the people of Llanfihangel y Creidyn and the community of Trawsgoed the assurance that that confirmation will be honoured under the agreement with your government?
Yes, of course. I will write to the member once the details are available. We know that 68 properties in Aberystwyth are now part of broadband, superfast broadband, and 53% in Bow Street, and a good proportion in Aborth, but of course that is no help to the people of Llanfihangel y Creidyn or Trawsgoed, so I will write to the member.
Ramsey.
Yeah. Will the First Minister make a statement on his economic priorities for South East Wales?
Yes, supporting jobs and growth is a priority across Wales. We have a variety of programmes to do this, including the provision of business support through Business Wales, support for skills development and transport and ICT infrastructure improvements.
Thank you, First Minister. We recently celebrated Back to the Future Day, and back in 1955, you could hop on a train at Monmouth's Mitchell Troy station, travel down one of the world's most beautiful railways in David Ellis Thomas's Wye Valley, and then connect to the National Rail Network at Chepstow. 60 years later, Monmouth isn't yet on the Metro map. The Metro is a key component of the future of economic prosperity in Monmouthshire and South East Wales. Are you looking at ways that we can get Monmouth and outlying areas like that back on the Metro map?
Well, I can't be held responsible for the beach incuts, but I take the point. Until until quite recently, it was possible to see Raglan Station, of course, from the A449. I think the bit has been moved now, but it was possible to see it. Well, there's no reason why Monmouth can't be part of the South East Wales Metro. There's no reason why in time it cannot be part of the network, whether it's possibly light rail or whether it's through faster bus connections. It's not just about heavy rail. It's the whole point of the metro network. So we're more than happy to work with Monmouthshire Council to see how the metro network can be extended to Monmouth and indeed some other parts of Monmouthshire as well. We know, of course, the railway line runs through southern Monmouthshire and crosses the border at Chepstow, but no reason why it can't happen, of course, in principle, in time to come.
Mick Antoniv.
First Minister, I'm sure you'll agree that the economic priorities for the people of South East Wales are very much the same as those of the people of the Pontypridd constituency, and that is having enough to actually live on. Will the First Minister agree with me that the 4,500 families in the Pontypridd constituency alone who are going to face an attack on the tax credit system, that the Tories have no mandate, having said before the election that they would not cut tax credits, they now have no mandate to inflict this poverty on the people of Wales.
Well, I mean, quite right. We all saw the Prime Minister in election programme saying that he would not cut tax credits. We also saw him say that Valley's line electrification and the main line would also be funded as well. And then we were told that that wasn't actually right, even though we'd all seen him say it. But that was resolved, fortunately. But the issue of tax credits was not resolved. We say to people that we want to see people in work, that work will pay, and then we say that, well, actually, it's not going to pay as much as it did before. If you look at The Economist this week, not exactly a left-wing paper, it makes the point that for people earning £11,000, roughly that level, the marginal tax rate is 80%. If tax credits go, and we know that many families will suffer as a result of that, and the message being given by the UK government is, if you work hard but your wages are low, we'll penalise you further.
Lindsay Whittle.
Well, First Minister, I would like to see more businesses taking advantage of the infrastructure in Wales as opposed to crossing the border and the bridges. Is it possible you can give us a more detailed progress on how you're strengthening and improving Cardiff Airport and what efforts you're making to promote the use of the Cardiff Wales Airport, I suppose we should call it, amongst businesses in South East Wales in particular, as opposed to them crossing constantly over to Bristol?
Well, in September, passenger numbers were 21% up on the previous September. There were similar increases of between 8 and 10% in July and August. I saw the planes come over my house every 5 minutes when Ireland were playing in the quarter and semi-final. It was good to see the airport was at capacity at that point, and I was in the airport on Saturday as well, and good to see the airport busy. So we aren't seeing Flybe have arrived. We're seeing Aer Lingus continuing to thrive at the airport. There are discussions taking place with other airlines in terms of long-haul flights. We saw Lord Robedo say that taking the airport into public ownership was the right thing to do, and he was shocked at the state of the airport when we took it over. We now have an airport that is moving in the right direction. We're seeing a great growth in passenger numbers, and that is something we fully expect to see continue in the future.
Question 7, Andrew Arty-Davis.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. What measures is the Welsh Government taking to improve the economic outlook of South Wales Central?
Well, we're supporting economic growth through support for new and existing businesses, infrastructure improvements, and promoting Wales as a business and tourism destination.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. Obviously, we've just had a very successful Rugby World Cup. The rugby ball was taken out of the wall of Cardiff Castle last night, as the pictures attest to this morning. And it was a hugely successful event, building on many other sporting events that the capital city has hosted, which are huge economic opportunities for businesses the length and breadth of South Wales Central. However, there were significant transport issues related to some of the key matches, both on road and rail. What measures will the Welsh Government be undertaking to assess what changes, if any, they think appropriate with the operators, such as Arriva Trains or indeed the Severn Bridge toll section, toll plaza, to make sure that there is a better flow of traffic and passengers in and out of our capital city, so people don't leave with a negative impression of their journeys in and out of Cardiff?
Well, there are a number of issues there. First of all, the Pringlas tunnels don't help in terms of traffic. In terms of the 7 bridges, there's no reason actually why those bridges need to have tolls at all in terms of toll barriers. If you travel on the M50 in Dublin, there are 2 bridges which are toll bridges. They're electronic, they're run by cameras because there were enormous traffic problems in those tolls. And what the Irish government did was convert them into tolls where you have to prepay. There's a website, you prepay beforehand, you have the chance to pay within 24 hours of going through the tolls themselves. So actually, in time, there's no reason why there should be barriers there at all. It can all be electronic. That should help the flow of traffic. In terms of trains, well, we made strong representations to the train operators, as did the Secretary of State. The difficulty is, of course, that given the structure of rail that we have now, there's not much spare capacity. In the days of British Rail, they would bring rolling stock in from the southeast of England for the rugby internationals, and they would run them regularly as the games were on. With the current operators, that slack isn't there in the same way. And, of course, we see situations where Network Rail close the tunnel down, where the train operators then find that they can't get to London particularly as quickly as is normal. You know, the trains aren't running properly. This is what happens when you have a system that doesn't have sufficient public control over it. 20 years ago, there was no problem. British Rail were well able to handle the numbers going through Cardiff Central Station. Yes, there are more people now, but the capacity isn't there. Nevertheless, we continue to work with the sporting authorities like the Welsh Rugby Union and the train operating companies to make sure they don't have the same experience in the future. And the same thing happened in Twickenham. Same thing happened there, where people were left stranded at Twickenham Station because the station couldn't cope with the numbers at a particular time of night. So a lot of thought's got to be given to how the British rail system can actually cope with big events in the same way as they do elsewhere in the world. We don't seem to do it as well as we should.
Indit Parrott.
Josh Deborah, First Minister, the Metro clearly is a very important piece of infrastructure for the economic outlook of my region. A part of that is going to be the development of new stations so that people can get onto the Metro. And the National Transport Finance Plan does include a list of stations, including Roath Park, Cruise Road and Gabalva in my own region, which might potentially be considered for stations in the future. However, it says that the planning and the assessment of those stations is going to take from 2015 to 2020 and beyond. And there's no commitment to actually build a single brick. When might the first stations be built?
Well, we're looking to see the Metro has already started in terms of phase one. We're looking to see another phase begin in 2017. The difficulty is that many of the powers that are required to put the Metro in place are not devolved, particularly in terms of light rail and particularly in terms of buses. So we don't have the full range of powers that we would want, but nevertheless there's no reason to suspect that anybody will want to prevent the Metro taking shape. The next stage for us will be looking at each of the individual lines, deciding what the best mode of transport is, and then looking at how those stations can be reopened. Cruise Road Station is still there, of course, the building is still there, although whether it's still usable as a station is anybody's guess. But the whole point is that the eastern part of Cardiff is not well served, particularly by the rail network. How can that be resolved? How do we make sure that if new estates are built around South Wales, how are they connected through the public transport network? All these form part of our thinking in terms of not just creating the Metro system now, but making sure it's future-proofed with regard to the years to come.
Question 8, Mike Hedges.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on how the Swansea City region's economy is being improved?
Yes, we're working to support jobs and growth in every part of Wales, and the Swansea Bay City Region Board is making good progress in identifying key proposals.
Thank you, First Minister, for that answer. What role do you see for the very successful and growing universities in the area to help further develop the local economy?
The universities have been astonishingly successful. 2 weeks ago, I was at the opening of the new engineering campus on Fabian Way, a remarkable investment by the university. Wouldn't have happened without European money either, and I think that's something we need to emphasise, and of course the support we gave as a government. It's had the effect of drawing some of the best academics in as well, and it will also draw in the best students. And of course we have the UWTSD proposal for a new campus on the SA1 site. That again is a highly ambitious and complementary development. And it shows that the investment is going into Swansea to strengthen not just the city's academic community, but the city's economy in the future.
Altaf Hussain.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, I am sure you would agree for the full benefits of economic growth to be felt across whole Swansea. The Welsh Government should do all in its power to help local employers make the most of local skills within the workforce. Will the First Minister therefore back calls to scrap the age restriction on the Jobs Growth Wales scheme so that all members of the community in Swansea have the chance to benefit
Order.
from growth.
You must relate it to Swansea quickly, now come on.
So have the chance to benefit from growth in the local economy and do not end up being, in effect, excluding from the market for many skilled jobs simply because the current scheme deems them too old.
Well, they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I've listened to 4 years of the Tories criticising Jobs Growth Wales, saying that it's useless, it doesn't work, and so forth, and now and now they're taking it on board. I mean, we work with employers to make sure that they understand the skills and experience that older people, not older people, but older workers can bring. But we also know that young people, especially given the fact they're being hammered by the UK government at the moment, do need an extra leg up. They do need that extra support, and that's what Jobs Growth Wales is designed to do, to give them that experience, not just in terms of skills, but of the work environment at a time when everything else that my generation took for granted, and indeed the Prime Minister's generation took for granted, is being removed from them. We will stand by our young people as we've always stood by older people as well.
David Rees.
First Minister, you've already indicated that the opening of the new second-year campus at Swansea University, the Science Innovation Campus in Fabian Way, is a mechanism by which we can look forward to new opportunities, and particularly research and development has been offered there. What discussions has the Welsh Government had with the university to attract businesses into research and development so we can actually develop the high-end engineering skills that we need in our economy?
I am aware that the engineering campus is in the member's constituency. I know that I should have said that at the beginning. He keeps on reminding me of that. But I know that officials do work with universities and the local authority in Swansea to develop and support inward investment leads and new R&D businesses. 2 examples. The Wales Coating and Printing Centre, we supported that, world-leading research and development centre for advanced manufacture by printing, and of course Specific, the academic and industrial consortium led by Swansea University with Tata, with NSG Pilkington and BASF as strategic partners, and of course we support Specific as well.
Simon Thomas.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, the Milford Haven Enterprise Zone is part of the Swansea Bay City region. Is the only zone in Wales where you have to pay a toll to go from one part of the Enterprise Zone to another at 75 pence each way over the Cleddau Bridge. Now, if you look at the trunking of the Cleddau Bridge, are you actually going to abolish those tolls?
Well, that's an interesting question. Of course, it's been a toll that's been there for many years, and it would be something that we would consider if that is the direction of the road, whether it should be a trunk road or not. We'd have to consider the costs of the bridge itself as regards maintaining the bridge, and then of course we will take a decision.
Black.
Thank you, Mr. President. First Minister, one of the threats to the Swansea Bay region is the current state of the British steel industry. And obviously there's a lot of concerns about TARSA, which is so far weathering the storm. Can I ask what work your government is doing with the UK government in terms of trying to mitigate some of the costs which are threatening the future of that particular plant?
Well, much has been done. I mean, the Minister has written to UK ministers no fewer than 5 times this year, alone. We've continued to press the UK government for full implementation of the EII compensation package as soon as possible. High energy costs are brutal as far as the steel industry are concerned, and they are a serious matter. We've raised them time and time again with the UK government to make sure that British high energy manufacturers do not face the penalty of high energy costs, which is what they're facing at the moment. I can say that the Minister attended a steel summit on the 16th of October in Rotherham. We are working with the UK government's work groups looking at things like public procurement. You know, why isn't British steel being used in British projects in that way? We'll be holding a steel meeting ourselves on the 5th of November. That will be chaired by the Minister, and then we will look to continue with the discussions from then on. I understand as well there is a Competitiveness Council meeting in Brussels on Monday, and the Welsh Government will be represented at that.
Thank you, First Minister. Item 2 is the business statement and announcement, and I call the Minister for Finance and